the presentations, we will start and finish. And when you finished yours, is coming the next. Okay, discussions at the end. If I correctly understood the guidelines of the conference, and if Travis is here, please correct me if am I wrong. We have 6 presentations, 10 minutes each. Okay, at the end of each, have the next. Finishing the 6th presentation, we start with the questions. We open to the audience. I think that I don't have to press the button of recording. I hope that there are some ways to do this, but all the 6 presentations will be recorded, and the debate we are not okay. The debate will not be recorded. Okay. So the first presentation is Biomass Supply Contract for Sugarcane Biorefineries, Marcelo Magalhães, the School of Science and Engineering, São Paulo State University. Okay, the second will be Demián Olemberg. The third, Lorenzo. The fourth, Jorge. And then Andreia and Agustin. Last but not least. Okay? So let's get started. Please, everybody close your microphones. I will close mine. And Marcelo takes the presentation. 10 minutes, please.
So thank you, Zamaria. I'm going to start here. Screen share. How do I share the one I want? Please let me know if the screen sharing. Okay, so José Maria, I want to suggest you that the recording of the session, I don't know if it's going to be recorded or not, or if Travis is recording it. It's not clear to me.
Yes, it is being recorded.
Thank you, Travis. So let's start with biomass supply contracts for sugarcane biorefineries. So this is a study that it is a study of the master degree for Stephanie, and we are working together on this topic. Let's move further. So the outline, let's go to the outline. Okay, so the outline of the presentation covers motivation, objectives, and considerations about the contract modeling of raw material supply for first generation of ethanol. You know that it comes from molasses, from sugarcane molasses, and second generation conditioning factors of raw material supply, which is namely sugarcane bagasse and straw. Sugarcane straw only, it doesn't consider the other materials that could come from other crops like eucalyptus or whatever. So, and I'm going to go over what are the next steps that we are doing this study. It ends in the design or in the model of in the contract modeling, but we aim to run simulations based on specific regional data and using Bertolini methodology, which was presented in the past ICABR. So, and the last step is the conclusion. So, the motivation of this study is that the production of sugarcane in Brazil, growth both advancing in area and productivity. So, if in one hand there are limits to the growth of production, by land mostly. So on the other hand, biomass can be better used. But in one hand, there are limits to the growth of production by land and by productivity in the sugarcane agricultural production stage, So, but we can improve a lot if we can use biomass in the industrial process using bagasse and the straw from sugarcane for the production of second generation ethanol and other derived products by a concept of a biorefinery. So just making some historical, we need to position you to the to position you the second generation ethanol mill in the whole history of ethanol production in Brazil. We just start here from the with the first ethanol with the 70s ethanol program in the first phase of ethanol, in which we produced, it was called pro alcohol. It started in 1975, and it was a mix of mandate and subsidies for the ethanol. We had after that specific cars in the second phase that was developed to use the 100% ethanol, which failed later, and because of the low oil price, in the late 80s, we had an ethanol crisis, which went like from 85 up to 2000, and during this period, from the late 80s up to the starting of 2000, we developed the flex fuel car, which could use a percentage of ethanol and gasoline above 10% and above now 27%, without harming the car and harming its longevity and performance and whatever. So after the 2003, we observed a period of high increase of ethanol production, with new mills, with expansion, with a very strong expansion tied up to 2008. And after that, we have some variation of the production of ethanol. And in the late 2017, we had a Renova Bio program, right? Okay, let's move forward. So under the motivation, we have that the development of biorefinery faced challenges posed by the spatial heterogeneity and derived challenges, which refers to the supplier characteristics, heterogeneity of the suppliers, heterogeneity of the production, of the composition of biomass. Even if it's just sugarcane, you have a wide range of biomass composition. And there is a high cost of coordinating the supply chain when you have a bunch of independent producers, and holding everything, you have a very strong regulatory environment. So the contracts, under this kind of environment or economic environment, you have, the contracts are necessary to reduce risks, to reduce transaction costs, to stabilize quality of the raw material, and to attend regulations associated with demand, as reducing and mitigating the negative effects over the climate change. So establishing this kind of contract is a major agent problem, and that's why we expect in the next steps of the research, to run some simulations. So the objective of this study, is to evaluate the types of contracts prevailing in the supply of bagasse and the straw for the production of second-generation ethanol and energy. So we assume that the supply of raw material, bagasse and the straw for the second-generation ethanol, isn't totally independent of the market of supply for first-generation ethanol, which comprises mostly molasses. So given, and it's the traditional market that had been developed for hundreds of years in Brazil. So given the extensive need of data to fully accomplish the objectives of the study, the whole objective, We will present only the analysis of the main contracts conditionings according to the present literature on first generation contracts and what we expect and what we prepared for the second generation contracts, right? So to do that, we are going to analyze the sugarcane. We considered molasses as the main sugarcane raw material for the first generation ethanol. And we are going to use some insights from Neves and Conegero, Marx and Postal, and Feltre, Christina Feltre. So, and Marx Postal is here, attending this conference right now. So Neves and Conegero made a typology of a wide range of possible supply contracts based on a model developed by Integrated Sustainable Business Project, and it's very normative in such a way. Marx Postal developed empirical research, in which she analyzed access to sugarcane raw material, and she analyzed the contracts. It was not her main point on her thesis, but it was very useful for us. And Christina Feltre analyzed the governance structures for first generation raw material supply in São Paulo State Eastern area, right? So Neves and Conegero,
You have this slide to explain and finish, okay?
Oh, no. So I'm going to move forward. I'm going to explain. Thanks, José Maria. But I'm going to explain what we had, and I'm sending you the presentation. What we have, we had as main considerations for our work, what we have as the main characters of the governance structure that we are expecting for the contracts for second generation ethanol raw material supply. Which is, first, we are talking about submarket of first generation raw material, and so in the supply contracts we have the supplier, the contracts biorefinery. We are looking forward. For the supplier, we are going to represent it by three sets of variables. First, variables and conditionings about risk aversion, conditionings from the investment characteristics, which is access to land, technology, short-term capex, and production control. And the characteristics of raw material that supply does, the quality, the flow, the volume flow, and yes, it is. So from the biorefinery side, we are going to have 5 sets of conditionings, from the technical to the economical, investments, input, and output. So I can't explain to you all of them in 1 minute. So let's move for what we have as a conclusion in this part of the study. That is, from the literature, we have empirical mismatching against our theoretical modeling. So the attributes of transactions, which covers asset, specificity, uncertainty, frequency, do not seem to be decisive for the definition of governance structure. We will have to look for land historical access to land historical process, mills history, like when it began its activities, selling of the mills, the process of selling, and we realized that suppliers' culture matters. Relationships, informal relationships matters a lot in São Paulo State. It was observed non-exclusive, and we will have to take care of non-exclusive forms of contracts in which there are distinct pricing methods for the same supplier, sometimes in the same transaction, not only in the same contract. There are non-exclusive forms of governance, There are mixed forms of governance that suggest that it would be inappropriate to consider forms of governance as mutually exclusive. And in the short term, we have evidence from literature of vertical integration prevailing for raw material supply in the early stages of second generation ethanol production, as an extensive review of literature showed us, so that's it.
Thank you. So just give an idea of your work. More than this is quite impossible in 10 minutes, but yes. So let's move to.
Thank you, Zé Maria.
Okay, Demián, Olemberg.
How do I stop sharing here?
Yeah, Demián.
Or does
you.
he do hostile takes? Oh yes.
Yes, hostile takes.
Can you see my presentation all right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, please let me know if I'm out of time. Well, thank you very much. Well, let's start. We're going to talk about economic incentives and energy production from forest biomass in Argentina. I'll be trying to do it very briefly and take advantage of time for the more important things now. Well, we're going to talk a little about gender energy potential in our country, in Argentina, a few words about the political and regulatory framework, and we'll take the most of our time to explain our advances in an economic model that we're building to explain somehow the feasibility and viability conditions of this particular way of generating power energy, electric power in Argentina. Well, let's start by saying that gender energy is the energetic use of wood, basically, and it's a particularly interesting option to improve our energy matrix, which is highly fossil right now in international terms, and in whichever way you want to measure it, it's a highly fossil energy matrix we have in Argentina. So there are a lot of advantages of moving on to greener sources of energy, and dendro energy in particular, with the forest products and the forest byproducts and wastes, there are a lot of possibilities of very efficient uses of these materials. So here's a list you can later on see carefully and read detailed. Well, in our main antecedent for this research is the consultancy that INTA made with the United Nations FAO, by which we studied the potential for dendro energy production in Argentina. And as we can see in the maps, there's a huge amount of land that could be put into production of forest products to transform into energy. The numbers are here. Here you can see the figures. We have more than 15 million hectares in total. All the methodology and the technical details you can see in the publication that is cited there. So how much power is that? In a roughly made calculus, we could say that if we're being conservative about it, we can say that's easily more than 10,000 megawatts, which is 1/4 of the total installed power generation capacity in Argentina. So it's an interesting number, and there's that to build on. And let us say also that to this number, you have to add all the possibilities of using other sources of biomass that can be combined with wood and byproducts and wastes, which are not contemplated in this number. This is only counting for the forest produce, primary produce of that 15 million hectares, with its with its details in each part of the country, which you can see further on in the document, in the full text. Well, a brief note about the regulatory framework. As you can see, we're moving very fast. We're doing some magic here. I expect you will be able to understand some of these things. Well, in Argentina, we have specific regulations for the sector for non-conventional renewable energy sources. Mainly, we have national law that is 27,191, and its regulatory decree, which set a group of benefits, fiscal and financial benefits, that are intended to encourage investment, as well as a contract structure for energy, which is dollarized and has a quite transparent public bidding system. So companies that wish to enter the sector can do so with certain levels of certainty, if we want to say so. Now, the current energy matrix in Argentina looks like this when we talk about the renewable part of it. We currently have roughly an 8% of renewable energy of the total demand, which is growing, which is good news. And we will talk about a little more about that in a couple of minutes. I wish to move on with these concrete things. Mainly the incentives programs, the most successful incentive programs in Argentina for renewable energy are the Renovar and the FODER. The Renovar is the main policy instrument for renewable energy producing in Argentina. And well, here you can see the details in the presentation in the slide, with an element I would like to underline especially, that is the price. We have prices. Here's the arrow. We have prices that are substantially higher than the average, the energy average, whichever way you want to measure it in Argentina, by all means, which is quite stimulating for the sector. Well, we'll talk a little about this in a minute. So, well, there's a lot of public information available if you see the official sites for the sector. I invite you all to take a look at them later. So now we'll go directly to our model, so we have time to discuss it. We developed a typical model, forest production model, located in the province of Misiones, with the explicit purpose of making it an energy plantation. So it's a high density plantation with clones adapted, with clones that maximize the production of biomass, with a short cycle, etc., etc. All the details are in the document. And we carried on with an industrial stage of a 2 megawatt cogeneration electrical thermal power facility, as developed in the consultancy for the United Nations, and the antecedents by our chief engineer Zaderenko at the University of Misiones. So we developed a model taking into account all the technical relations with the local characteristics of different parts of the country. But in this particular case, we stick to the Misiones case, and we take on doing the following. We calculate the net present value of the project, the economic project of planting that forest for energy use, leaving the price as the variable we want to find out, as the control variable. So what we do is valorize all other variables and leave aside the price, which is what we want to know. And thus what we get is the minimum feasible or viable price that would compensate that net present value. The minimum price that would guarantee that making it would be a sound business. All the details, again, you can find in the complete document. And to talk about the results, we got that for this year, 2020, we would have, if we take into account a 5% discount rate as a reference, we would have a cost, if you want to call it that way, roughly $32 per megagram on a dry basis, which would be a little less for a humid wood. And if we use a 15% discount rate, $42. And this is the cost structure in both cases. Now, we translated that exercise all through the series 2010-2020 along the decade, and this is the result. What you can see here is the evolution of that minimum price that makes the business close. And then what we did was to compare this with the maximum viable prices that the industry could pay for, taking into account different prices for the industry, different prices for selling the electricity to the grid, to the interconnected system in Argentina, SADI by its acronym. So if we join the minimum prices and the maximum viable prices, what we get is a landscape where we can appreciate when the project would be viable and when it wouldn't. Later on, you can see carefully with more time. Now, if we take a look at last year's, maybe we would find that an energy project of this kind would only be viable really under certain specific circumstances. Most of the years it wouldn't be viable due to the requisites and the assumptions made of in the model. It would be very difficult to justify a project of this type, the viability of a project of this kind with these models behind it. If we compare the cost to produce wood for energy and in Argentina under the given conditions with the price of chips, for example, we would find that the chips would be the dark blue. We would see that there's a real disadvantage in producing wood for this purpose. And well, the orange one, the orange line represents the maximum price the industry would pay if the energy sold had to be sold at the average price in the electricity wholesale market in Argentina. So that's quite rough conditions. Well, what we had then was a gap between both prices, the maximum and the minimum prices. And we wanted to explain what that gap depended on. So we, after a lot of research, yeah, thank you very much. Almost done. After some research, we found that there's a very strong relationship and very graphical, visible relationship if we consider that price gap, maximum minus minimum price for the sector, for our model, against wages in dollars in Argentina. As you can see, there's a nearly linear relation, very stable through the years. That made us think a lot of conclusions about this, or a lot of ideas at least. Well, I'm gonna read the conclusions so we can move on with the rest of the presentations, and later on we can discuss whichever detail you'd like. So some of the incentive tools discussed in this paper have gradually come to fruition in the past few years, especially in featuring Renovar. But we can also see that at least some of the projects awarded under such program, particularly those related to forest biomass, are on hold until business conditions look better, which made us, which is coherent with what we find in the model, but makes us think anyway, the regulatory criterion. It is striking that precisely those instruments that seek to encourage investment with a set of special rules are in most of the times perceived in a negative way by companies' representatives. The regulatory framework to promote this sector precisely forms a block which is intended to isolate the sector for the rest of the economic from the rest of the economic policy. But maybe you could think, well, maybe it was not enough. But it was not enough. It's not compatible with the prices we've been seeing a couple of minutes ago. So there's a lot to think about this. We sustain that it is very important not to lose focus on forestry in order to solve a unilateral energy problem. And the importance of seeking general efficiency by using the materials that can be produced, especially in Argentina, in industries that range from solid wood uses to different types of bioreactors, and counting on that there will be always waste and byproducts. All the processes have waste, and they may be used for energy purposes, building on its residual value. That's all we wanted to say in very, very, very short time. Thank you very much, and we move on.
Presentation, okay. Very interesting presentation. It's a pity that.
Thank you very much.
10 minutes. I would rather ask some questions, but
yes.
we do it at the end. Thank you, Demián. Lorenzo,
thank you.
It's up to you now. Okay. Please, Lorenzo, go.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you for your assistance to this session. My name is Lorenzo Perrotta, economist of the University of Buenos Aires. And today I'll be presenting a study on the net social benefit of developing energy from biomass in Argentina using an input-output model for the province of Misiones, which was prepared in conjunction with Priscila Ramos and Carlos Romero at ICABR. Do you see my screen? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Due to the depletion of non-renewable energy sources and its impact on climate change, the global energy sector has begun a process of transition and diversification of the energy matrix and a rational use of energy. As seen in Figure 1, the energy sector in Argentina is one of the main greenhouse gas emitters with a 53% share in the national total. The fulfillment of the UN Sustainable Development Goal of the energy sector would be crucial to mitigate climate change in Argentina. As part of this purpose, a series of laws were enacted with the objective of increasing the participation of renewable energies until reaching 20% of electrical consumption by 2025, and to legislate a regulatory framework for the distribution of renewable energies into the public grid. In this context, the use of energy from biomass plays a key role. As seen in Figure 2, although the installed capacity of bioenergy has been growing in Argentina in the recent years, its 1.4% share in the energy matrix is still low. The use of biomass as a renewable energy source could allow for clean energy production, particularly in regions where there is a natural comparative advantage and other energy sources are expensive. As can be seen in the following map of national biomass balance by census radius, this is the case of Misiones, a province in the northeast of Argentina, which shows a great potential for energy production through biomass of its forestry activity. The map shows a clear biomass surplus in almost every department of Misiones, whose map is entirely green. The biomass balance is of approximately 4 million tons per year, almost doubling the national mean of 2.4 million tons per year. Also, Misiones' demand for biomass of forest origin represents 42% of the national total with 2.3 million tons per year. We estimated the total installed capacity of Misiones at 323 megawatts, of which 83 megawatts represent the biomass installed capacity. The province seeks to double its energy matrix in the next 10 years based on the use of forest biomass. It is in this sense that Misiones promulgated a series of laws in order to develop a regulatory framework for dendroenergy resources and steam generators with the objective of promoting energy efficiency, promote R&D, and the use of clean, renewable energy sources capable of generating quality green jobs and mitigating environmental impact. The main objectives of this study are, first, to evaluate the net social benefit of the development and the investment of bioenergy from biomass in Misiones. Then, study and estimate characteristics of the forest biomass sector and its value chain in Misiones due to the lack of information in official statistics. Lastly, using an input-output model, we simulate production and investment scenarios and extract lessons for sectoral public policies and possible modifications of the current regulations. Regarding the methodological framework, we develop a regional input-output matrix for Misiones using the following data: the Argentina input-output matrix of 1997, the economic census and supply and use tables for 2004, the level of occupation by activity sector for Misiones from the 2010 census, crop data from the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, the wisdom reports from 2015 to 2018, and surveys to companies in the biomass sector. The initial transformation of the national matrix for the province of Misiones was carried out using flex location quotients, which is an indirect method. Then, to the regional transaction matrix, information from expert surveys was added on technologies, consumption, and intermediate sales of the forest biomass sector. To ensure that both sets of information are consistent and the sums of the rows is equal to that of the columns, the RAS, or biproportional balancing technique, was applied. As a result of this process, we obtain a 25-sector regional input-output matrix for Misiones containing the forest biomass sector as seen in this table in yellow. The sectors important to disaggregate it were agriculture, forestry and fishing, paper and wood, and chemical products. It can be seen that the industrial forestry sector consumes more than 80% of the total biomass demanded. Among the crops that contribute the most to obtaining biomass, forest cultivation stood up, followed by yerba mate and tea plantations in third place. Once we obtain our regional input-output matrix for Misiones, we use closed and open input-output models based on Miller and Blair. Then we use output and employment multipliers to capture the difference between an initial effect of an exogenous change and the total effect of that change. We can distinguish between two types of multipliers. On the one hand, the simple or type 1 multipliers are associated with open models that capture both the direct and indirect effects, while total or type 2 multipliers associated with closed models capture direct, indirect, and induced effects. In a closed model, the household income and expenditure becomes endogenous, including households as one more sector. Using the input-output model described above, increases in final demand resulting from increases in final consumption of bioenergy and investment in the expansion of productive capacity are simulated. In scenario A, we simulate a 15% increase in production due to a possible underestimation of installed capacity caused as a result of the scarcity and heterogeneity of information. Regarding scenario B, an increase in investment in order to double the installed capacity of 83 megawatts is simulated. Two alternatives are studied, one with locally produced machinery and equipment, and the other with import equipment from outside the province. Lastly, scenario C of wisdom potential impact is analyzed. We evaluate the effects related to an increase in production to levels estimated in wisdom reports for Misiones with an increase in installed capacity of 215 megawatts to make use of the 4 million tons per year biomass surplus. We present in the first column of this table the scenario followed by the magnitude of the shock Then delta X corresponds to impacts on output, and delta L corresponds to impacts on employment. In scenario A, an increase in production levels of 15% results in a direct impact of 70 million pesos of 2015 in the gross value of provincial production, the GVP, an indirect impact of 33 million pesos, and induced impacts of 11 million pesos that sum up to a total impact of 115 million pesos. Regarding job creation, a total of 246 new positions are created, which break down into 45 direct, 174 indirect, and 27 induced positions. Lastly, we can disaggregate the multiplier effects by gender, being the female participation of 6% in the open model and 9% in the closed model. In scenario B, an increase in installed capacity of 83 megawatts in order to double it is analyzed. It is evaluated in two alternative scenarios with the machinery and equipment produced locally or import, and the shock is the same in both of them. The scenario B.2 is more feasible since most of the capital goods in biomass power plants are produced locally. In this scenario, in the construction and installation phase, there is a total impact of 1,484 million pesos on GDP, a total job creation of 3,700 new jobs, and a female participation of 11% in the open model and 17% in the closed model. If we manage to produce the required equipment locally, the total impacts on output and employment are roughly doubled, with an impact on GDP of 3,393 million pesos and a total job creation of 6,793 new jobs. Also, the female participation in new jobs increases to 13% in the open model and 19% in the closed model. Finally, regarding the operation or production phase, the impacts are the same in both scenarios, with an output effect of 1,617 million pesos on GDP, a total job creation of 3,461 new jobs, and the female participation remaining the same as scenario A, which is 6% in the open model and 9% in the open model, in the closed model. Lastly, in scenario C, the effects related to a potential increase in installed capacity of 250 megawatts are evaluated. During the construction phase, the investment effect predominates, and then the impact from the productive activity takes prominence. From the total job creation of 26,552 new jobs, the most important is derived from the installation of plants, representing 66% of job creations with 17,000 jobs. The job creation during the plant's lifespan accounts for around 9,000 positions. Finally, the total effects on GDP represent 2,000 million pesos. And regarding the female participation in the construction phase, it is the same as in scenario B.1, and in the production phase, it's the same as in scenario A. In the previous simulations, we consider large-scale biomass plants. Now we introduce the sensitivity scenario in which we consider an increase in installed capacity through small and medium-sized plants of up to 5 megawatts with lower employment multipliers in the production phases. As a result, we appreciate a considerable increase in employment multipliers in both the open and closed model from 4.9 to 28 in the type 1 multiplier, and from 5.52 to 33 in the type 2 multiplier. The direct employment generation decreases from 628 new positions to 88 in scenario B, and from 1,625 to 277 in scenario C, while indirect and induced job creation remains almost unchanged.
Okay.
To sum up, in this study, we develop a regional input-output matrix for Misiones a province which displays a great biomass potential. Then, using both the open and closed input-output model, we evaluated the impact on production and employment of different production and investment scenarios. The main findings of this study are that impacts on production and job creation increase notably when considering locally produced machinery and equipment. This is also complementary with a gender agenda to increase female participation in new jobs created. Therefore, it would be advisable to accompany any government program to promote this type of energy with a regime of incentives for the participation of locally produced components in order to capture the positive effects of an increased production and job creation in the province. If not, the creation of financial regimes for capital goods, considering the large participation of import components in biomass plants that operate at small scale would be desirable. We can also supplement the above suggestions with a policy of subsidies and incentives with long-term pricing contracts per megawatt hour to increase profitability as an incentive for investment in this type of project.
Okay, Lorenzo, you're just ahead of time.
Okay.
If you have some, please finish.
Okay, I finished these two bullets and I'm done. These policies could be complemented with R&D programs in national institutes and local universities. And given the site-specific nature of this energy, is that the laying of electrical networks become necessary to inject and distribute the energy to the network. And as extensions, we ask ourselves if this energy does solve the problem of employment in the long run, and this employment is susceptible to being affected by improvements in technological efficiency. However, this energy has the benefit of retaining employment in rural areas, allowing to counteract internal migratory flows. Also, it is necessary to determine a qualitative impact on employment together with a quantitative impact of the use of renewable energies, evaluating environmental externalities. And to conclude, it would be interesting to use other models introducing dynamics like CGE models regarding technological advances, changes in relative prices, and consumption patterns. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Lorenzo. Great job. Let's go to Jorge, I think. It's environmental performance of Argentina biofuels. Jorge Antonio Hilbert. Jonatan, Inta. Okay? It's up to you, George. I asked people if they finished, when they finished to see a presentation, they have the chat, and then you can put in your questions on the chat, please. Would be great if you do this, because I think that I can select the questions that are one are close to another and prepare the debate session. Okay?
Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. I hope you're seeing my screen now. I called this presentation Environmental Performance of Argentine Biofuels. I belong to INTA. INTA is an organization that covers the whole country on the agro-industrial and the agriculture sector, and it depends on the Ministry of Agriculture. We do research and extension within the same organization. So first of all, when we talk about sustainability of biofuels, we have to keep in mind that we are talking about a very complex transformation in biorefineries of biomass. With a base there, you can see a large base with a very low income, $300 to $600 a megawatt, and in the top, a wide range of important income. So to achieve a sustainable production of energy, you must find a way to share products between different targets we see in the pyramid. To achieve this, you need a lot of scientific work in the scientific field, international negotiations, and also market studies and diplomatic relations. So biofuels are in a very complex new markets with multiple interactions. You see there different blocks that are interacting between one another. You see national and international regulations, environmental requirements, and use of agrochemicals, and so on. So bioenergy has come to fill the puzzle here to produce more food, more feed, more chemicals, and more materials through biorefineries and through this new concept we're dealing here in this Congress in the bioeconomy. On the other hand, you're looking at rapid changes in the public perception through mass media and social networks. You see very rapid changes in the perception of different products coming from biorefineries. On the other hand, you have the turtle. You have very slow response from the scientific and the academic sector, because these systems are really very, very complex to study. So the principal characteristic of large biofuels scale production in Argentina has no energy dedicated crops. Biofuels are derived from well-established transforming chains of food, fiber, and feed, and are produced as co-products from these transformations. So they rely on logistics and size economic savings. They produce multiple impacts. They are much affected by local and by the international policy, and they have a great plasticity. Regarding the biomass production, we are talking about an agriculture that's more than 80, nearly 90% no tillage, with a better carbon and water footprint in the overall. So just a snapshot of what Argentine biofuel industry looks like. We have regarding bioethanol, the old and reinvesting and upgrading sugarcane plants in the north part of the country, and you have the new cornstarch bioethanol plants in the central plains of Argentina. They are brand new plants, very efficient and with a very low environmental impact and high efficiency. Regarding the biodiesel sector, you have large and medium scale plants. The large plants are mainly focused on the international market, and the medium and small plants are specialized in the local markets. So, as I mentioned, this relies regarding biofuels and bioethanol on a big concentration of feedstocks in a circle in which center we place the biorefinery sector. We've been doing for more than 10 years studies over this complex transformation chain, looking at biodiesel, at bioethanol, and lately at biogas. These are the company's participation on the different biofuels. They represent more than 90% of the market in our whole studies. What methodology tools we use for our study? We use IPCC regarding the national greenhouse gas inventories. We have the directives of the European Union. We have guidelines of the appointment of emissions. So they are well-known international tools. So the instruments we use, we develop specific spreadsheets for each plant, for each biofuels. We also use international programs, CIMAPRO, or calculators as GREET. Regarding the certification, within the 13 schemes recognized by European unions, 3 are mainly used in Argentina: 2BS, ESSC, and RTRS. Our studies are the base for the certification of the biofuels being exported to different markets. This, as an example, is the emission estimation of the Annex 5 of the European Union Directive, where you see there we are covering the industrial part, the agriculture part, and the transport part of the emissions. Some real numbers on Argentine industry. Here we're looking at the latest studies on biodiesel in the country. There you're seeing that we have a difference between the default values of contained in the European Union and the real values in Argentina that are around 50%. We have 50% less emissions in the feedstock production. Regarding the total biodiesel numbers, we are reaching a greenhouse reduction of nearly 73%. And in the graph in below, you have it there, which is a share between the industry emissions, between the feedstock emissions, and between the transport emissions. This study included nearly 26 million tons of processed soybeans and 2 million tons of biodiesel in whole. All the industry was studied in this huge study we made in 2018. Regarding bioethanol plants, we've been working with the 3 main bioethanol, cornstarch bioethanol plants in Argentina for nearly 8 years now. The mean greenhouse reductions achieved is around 70% or even more than 70% of greenhouse reductions, and there are still new improvements in the pipeline as continuous plant efficiency improvements. We have also in some plants biogas integration using tillage that lowers even more the emissions, achieving greater emission reductions. We have additional co-products coming out of the biorefineries as the CO2, biogenic CO2 capture and industrial use. And also we are starting with biofertilization and carbon sequestration in soil. So we hope that in the next years, this 70% emission reduction could become even larger. Just an example, here we are looking at the influence of adding new products into the biorefineries, looking into the energy allocation in the middle 2 columns. There it's achieving nearly 81% of emission reduction, this plant, with a 10% improvement since there is a new product and a new credit. This credit is not only a calculation, but it has also been certified and approved by the European Union. The latest study we are finishing is the introduction of regional studies on feedstocks. The European Union makes possible for each country to publish the regional BECS, even economic region numbers for the feedstock. We presented this at the beginning of this year, and we have the first revision. And now we are hoping this will be approved before the year ends. We've been working also on second generation biofuels with 2 projects. We've been working with several partners, research partners from Europe, Mexico, and Argentina. Yes, looking at different feedstocks, our goal was achieving an energy efficiency of below 0.5, and the mean was between 0.45 and 0.51. And regarding carbon footprint, our target was going below 34, and depending on the feedstock, the numbers range between 30 and 64. No, so the numbers are not very good for second generation biofuels. These are open numbers, not the numbers that are always published at huge savings, but you never know where are those numbers coming from. There you have the comparison with the first generation biofuels coming from Argentina with energy efficiency of 0.34 for cornstarch and 0.33 for soybean oil, and the emission measured in grams of CO2 per megajoule, 22 to 29 for cornstarch, and 23 to 26 for soybean oil. Okay, thank you for your time, and I wait for your questions. Are you there?
Yes. José Maria? Are you muted?
Yeah. Sorry. I was. Now is Andreia. Thank you, Jorge, for your presentation. Now is Andreia. Some questions are in the chat. Now we have a lot of questions. I think that people will have time to answer. Then, Andreia, you have 12 minutes now. Everybody, there's some tolerance.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, let's go directly to the storytelling. The idea of the research is to understanding, well, the situation is the inclusion is key for the fair development. However, the history of Brazilian sugarcane has a lot of bad signs of exclusionary character, mainly in terms of land concentration and bad working conditions. This, together with the other global concerns in the last decade, especially food security, delayed the expansion of ethanol biofuels, slowing down the transition for a bio-based economy that would benefit everybody. Well, however, some authors, I put here Moraes, 2015, but there's a lot of others, mentioned that the sector had improved a lot in the last decade, in the last expansion cycle, and this practice helped to improve poverty alleviation is one of the results of this process. And because of that, these aspects should be considered in the analysis of the ethanol biofuels as an inclusive crop. Then the question is, how better is this? Is it real or not? How to compare these? Then we go to the field research. We did the 353 interviews in 5 states of Brazil, São Paulo, Goiás, Mato Grosso do Sul, Minas Gerais, and Paraná, to understand and how better is the value chain sharing its value compared with the past. And we focus in 4 types of impact: business model, land concentration, working conditions, and food security. The general answers we will see now. Well, as I said, inclusion is a key aspect. Last decade was marked by the liberalization of sugar markets, growing importance of environmental aspects, and then these contextual factors brought important difference. Some authors argued that for the inclusive benefits of this. I'm not stay on this because it's too much, but here is some of the difference that make this cycle, this last expansion cycle, so special. The methodology that they use is literature review to understand what are the main aspects of this exclusionary character of sugarcane biofuels, secondary data, and a lot of field research where when we analyze the response in two ways, in a quantitative way using descriptive, and qualitative data, we analyze the speech of the respondent using MaxQDA software, content analysis software. The key aspects that we analyzed was land concentration, with the vertical integration business model to assess sugarcane. This was mentioned as one reason for this exclusionary character. Working condition, because always people said about the bad working conditions with manual cutting. And also we include here, this is not a very important issue in the Brazilian perspective, but it's very important in the international arena debate. The analysis that we put here is, this graphic shows most of the responses in the business model. We ask them the mills access to sugarcane through planting their own lands, or it means vertical integration. Most of them say no, there is no, the prevalent business model is not vertical integration. Most of them mention horizontal arrangements as lease land, independent suppliers contract, or sharecropping. This model is the most prevalent now. This is completely different from the past. And just 60 people said planting on one land. But when we go to land concentration itself, the balance between those who believe and not believe or not agree with the statement is not so open. 46.7 agree with the statement that the arrival of sugarcane caused the land concentration in the hands of few peoples. Well, the majority is still states saying no land concentration, but it's not the same. And what we perceive in this, the conclusion of this land concentration debate is that business model, statistical, and perception analysis confirm the prevalence of lease land contracts as the main options for landowners. At first glance, this evidence could indicate an inclusive impact, since it gives chance that farmers could participate of the sugarcane value chain. However, perceptions about land concentration is not so uniform. Although most of the respondents say land concentration had no changes due to sugarcane, a good number of them perceive some concentration and justify them through changing hands. What happened is somebody who has farm in São Paulo state went to Minas Gerais state to buy land and to lease that land for the mills. In a local perspective, there is no concentration in terms of use, but there is a concentration in terms of ownership that is not captured by the local perceptions. Well, when confronted with secondary data at local level, the results present some land concentration, but in national level, and we could not confirm this since this data is not allowed for everybody. It's due to privacy issues. When going to working conditions, here was very clear that a very big improvement in working conditions. Just 16% say the working conditions worsened. And more than this, those ones who said no degrading working conditions, they give a lot of examples. Most of them formal contract, better wages, qualification of labor, safe conditions, health insurance, and other labors. You can see from 194 say no degrading, and just 22 said the working conditions worsened. It was very flagrant on this. And the discussion said 85% of the respondents do agree with the perceptions about improvements in working conditions. Main benefits was formalization and better wages. Secondary data confirm increase in the formalization in labor contracts in the sample area. But the most interest is these two new insights. The improvement in working conditions is spill over to other sectors in the region. It's not just the sugarcane employees who had the formalization of the contract, but because the scarcity of a workforce, other sectors also have these benefits. People who work for stores, for restaurants, they also had a formalization of their contracts, because if not, they could be hired by the sugarcane mill. And according to respondents, main reason for this improvement was the harvest mechanization process and the intensive labor inspection by authorities. The last aspect is food security. This is a very huge aspect. We should analyze food security mainly in two parts. We analyze here food production and food availability, food access. And they additionally mentioned that what sugarcane replaced in that specific region. Most of the respondents mentioned cattle and degraded pasture. And they usually used to argue about that to explain what is the impact on production and sex. Most of the respondents mentioned about, well, sugarcane has no impact in access of food because we improve our wages, we have better wages and formal contracts, and because of this, we can buy a lot of food. We don't have this chance before. In terms of food production, most of them said that sugarcane goes through soybean and cattle. They mentioned cattle or milk, depending on the region. But most of them, the sugarcane goes through extensive monoculture. Then this is not edible crops. And all the people in that region, they used to buy the edible crops from other specialized region in Brazil or in Argentina or in the surrounding areas. Then they don't use to have all the food production in the same place. Then most of the respondents who say there's no change in food access mentioned that they do use to buy edible crops from other parts of Brazil. And because of that, sugarcane arrival imply no change. When the respondents speak about production, they usually refer to decrease of, they usually said about the decrease of, and secondary data on food production point that there are an accentuated decrease in cattle, and this all states. Well, here is the table with the all conclusions for each one of the items. What are the main outcomes and the reason for this, and who are the main driver for this changing? And the general conclusion, since we defined inclusion of impact as the improvement of living conditions for local stakeholders, field research show a good satisfaction of local communities about the impact of sugarcane in their region. Some of those themes were confirmed by secondary data, business model, working conditions, and food access. However, land concentration, the perceptions are not aligned with secondary data, which point to a small increase in land concentration. Then, in general, the last expansion cycle of sugarcane in Brazil has improved the inclusion in terms of business model, working conditions, and food access impact, although some indirect land concentration could not be avoided. And this is all. Many thanks for all. José Maria? José Maria?
Estou tendo problema aqui. Você conseguiu, you finished ahead of time. It's amazing.
Oh, yes, that time.
That's
You
just
cut.
clear. Thank you for your presentations.
Sorry,
very good presentation.
sorry if the speed was so fast, and but I think we have chance to discuss better.
Okay. There is a lot of questions, but let's move to the. I think that the last presentator. Yeah, we were doing great. Oh, no problems. Let me see here. I'm a little bit lost. That's the problem. Yeah, okay. I found it's Augustine. Oh, okay. Prices and bioenergy systems. I think that's a very interesting presentation too. Okay, people, I think there you are following my recommendation to use the chat for questioning the presentations. Okay, I think that we have time to do the discussion. And then, Agustin, let's go.
I have been having some problem with the connection. I will share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. This is a brief summary of a paper that we wrote with Roberto Bizan of Universidad of Buenos Aires. It is called Pricing and Bioenergy Systems. As an introduction, we mentioned that biofuels are a masterpiece of the bioeconomy. Their development must combine environmental care, but also private profitable. The current pricing system as an inducer of private decision and allocator of social resources became critical on 2 points. First, on establishing and promoting new sources of renewable energy in the long term, and in the short term to guaranteeing offer and profitability to the industry. Talking about creating and condition of new biofuel markets, we can say that the energy intensive paradigm basis on fossil fuels responds to short-term private price signals, but can generate long-term distortion. And in general, not always, but in general, it does not include negative externalities or sustainable demands. And that a shift towards a sustainable energy matrix demand at least 2 ways of response. One is to create the fundamentals rule for a new biofuel or bioenergy market. And second, to establishing a long-term price set that may include environmental restrictions, adjusting private profitable criteria to social objectives. At least we can find 3 different policy mechanisms depending on the degree of development of the industry. Talking about biofuels, the first step of degree is the mechanism of promotional for a new biofuel industry. According to the promotional regulatory framework, in this step, we assume that the industry in its infancy, it's burning and unable to develop without the promotion of public policy regarding its investment capacity in new production facilities, especially at the level of industrial transformation. The second step is the transitional regulatory frameworks between promotional and advanced or free competition schemes associated to the existence of the developing country industry, generally after a previous promotion regime, but yet unable to compete with the major industries such as the oil fossil fuels industry. And the third and more advanced is the regulatory framework for free competition. In this scheme, it assumes the industry is mature enough to develop its activity and compete without needing stimuli from the state. There are at least 3 issues to regulate, and also depending on the degree of development of the industry. First is the biofuels mandate or the biofuels blending and a trail of evolution. The second point are the mechanisms to determine biofuel pricing and subsequent adjustment over time, considering variation in raw materials and other elements that probably may affect the different structure of cost of biofuel cost. And there is a third point about regulation regimes that differentially tax biofuels in comparison with fossil fuels. In this case, environmental aspects are usually linked to differential tax scheme or to certification mechanism with advantage associated with the production and other use. And there are 4 other issues to regulate that I will mention forward. Talking about the first point, establishing the market of biofuels, we can find at least 2 typologies of market: the mandate markets, where markets arise from mandate blending of bioenergy in liquid fuels, and also of energy matrix or electric matrix, talking about bioelectricity. And they are also a second typology that are non-mandate markets. The lack of obligation on the use of bioenergy encourage direct competition by means of prices with fossil fuels and other research in this typology of market. Here it is a summary of different cases of mandate markets. I think everybody knows, but just to mention the Brazil politics with 27.5% and 11 going to 12 in biodiesel. Indonesia with 20% going to 30. Argentina with 12 in ethanol and 10 in biodiesel, and Colombia with a double 10 ethanol and 10 biodiesel are reference cases talking about mandates. And we also found 4 mechanisms to determine the second point, that was the biofuel prices. Going from right to left, the first and more regulated is the fuel regulated market, where the state sets purchase price and assign quantities. The second and the third are the binding. It could be an protected binding, where an actioner sets quantities to sell and divide or segment their offer according to certain characteristics. For example, the biodiesel sello social or social stamp in Brazil is a good example of this protected binding. In the pure binding, the difference is that the auctioneer sets quantity to sell and the price converges from the total offer. For example, Argentina from electric generation do some pure binding to have biodiesel. And the last one is the free markets, where buyer and sellers converge on price and quantity. For example, the hydrotreated bioethanol scheme in Brazil. It's a good example. The third point is the tributability mechanism. We have to say that in taxes, from general income to market distortion correction, and applying Pareto optimal criteria, conventional economy science identifies flaws in the function of markets, which translates into distortion that allow implementation of public policy. Talking about this, it is important to mention the creation of the carbon tax in 46 countries and 26 subnational states, another mechanism to internalize environmental costs like RenovaBio, and there are advantages on biofuels due to lower emission compared to fossil fuels. Is the carbon tax is extended to other countries. To summarize, we find 3 different schemes: the promotional, the transition, and the regulation schemes. And 3 or 5 topics to regulate in order of these 3 promotional, transitional, and regulation schemes. So in general, policies tend to regulate the blend. That could be mandatory, it could be ranges, or pure biofuels to compete directly to fossil fuels. Also, they also regulated the price, and I just described the 4 different schemes. The tax regimes, application to Biofuels, in comparison with the fuels, it's another topic, and some general tax schemes also should be regulated. To conclude, establishing the biofuel market was initially the result of an early private response to a set of stimuli arising from different state interventions. Policies used include at least 3 or 4 tools typologies. One is the market reserve and use, or the blend mandate. The second is the controlled price system. The third point is the differential tax and financial mechanism, deduction on production flows, and or investment in fixed assets like the CO2 taxes, the carbon capture bonds, etc., in order to correct distortion associated with externalities. And there are other technical regulation and general tax schemes to apply. Thank you very much.
Great. We just have some people did it fast, so we are not. I think that I don't know if there's some regulator that is going to shut up the recording, stop the recording, I think.
So now turning off the recording and also turning
off.
No,
I don't know, because they comment that the debates should not be recorded.
I don't know why.
Yes, no, I'm asking for the regulator.